Item 4. So I'm excited about this. Elisa's here, Elisa Dobbins, and Tom Buffalo. Tom, I'm used to talking about part-time community college issues, and he's got a different hat on now. So it's good to see you again, Tom. And they're going to talk to us about the changing landscape of an aging society. And this did come out of our offsite and talking about longevity. Obviously, it impacts our system in a lot of different ways. And so our committee was really interested in just sort of looking at implications for our fund. And so always excited to have these kinds of conversations and dig deeper into these topics that I think really impact our fund in significant ways. So take it away.
Thank you, and thank you for your interest. I would like to take just a very brief moment. We're actually going to present 2 studies. We'll be presenting back to back, and clearly this first study, Tom Buffalo is the lead researcher, and he'll be presenting his work. I'd like to give him a brief introduction. Tom has been with the research and development team at CalSTRS for almost 7 years, and he's been at CalSTRS for almost 12 years. Tom received his MBA from UC Davis in 2015, and we are very pleased to have his contributions. I think you're going to, I think it's going to be a great presentation. So without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to Tom.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So let's talk about trends in aging, trends in longevity, and how our members fit with those trends. So there's actually 2 schools of thought around life expectancy. In the academic world, you have one camp who has looked at the data and has said, well, we've seen this trend where basically every year we have gained 3 additional months of life expectancy. And so over a period of 4 years, we've gained 1 additional year of life expectancy. This particular camp of researchers says this is an enduring characteristic of the developed world, and as such, this is going to continue indefinitely. So they think that our chances of getting older and older are going to continue to increase for the foreseeable future. Now, there's another group that says, wait, no, that's not the case. Take a look at what we've actually experienced. Some of the oldest humans have only lived until about 115. We can't quite seem to break through that barrier. And so this other camp of researchers says, for whatever reason, genetically, physiologically, we are just sort of set to expire at 115 or so. And we're not going to see an increase in that anytime soon. So those are the 2 points of view. Which side is right, only time will tell. So we're getting older as a country. On the left, this is data from the Census Bureau. On the left is the composition of our population pretty much today, highlighting age 65 plus. About 1 in 6 people is older than 65 or older today. Now fast forward to the middle of the century, 2050, the expectation is that 20% of the population is going to be age 65 or older. So moving down to 1 in 5 people. So we, the people, are getting older. Now, an aging nation has implications on the workforce as well. So let me set up what you're seeing here. On the left side, we have just age brackets, 16 to 24, 25 to 34, etc. Right down the middle, there's a white line pointing to 0. If you have a briefcase to the left of the line, over the next decade, the expectation is that you're going to, your participation in the labor force is going to reduce. Whereas if you're to the right of the line, the expectation is that if you're that age, your participation in the labor force is going to increase. So pointing out the blue suitcases, or the blue briefcases, age 65 to 74 over the next decade is expected to have the largest numeric increase in the workforce, almost 4 million people.
Are you going to answer why?
I'm going to talk about our people why, but not
okay.
we the people why.
The country, and so everyone has to stay working because they can't afford to retire.
So another word on the labor force. So relative to each age group, so the labor force is expected to grow over the next decade roughly by about 0.5%. Those ages 65 to 74 relative to where they are now, are expected to grow 4.5%. And the only age group that's supposed to or expected to outpace them in growth in the labor force is actually age 75 plus. So our workforce is going to be getting older. So let's talk about our membership and what's been going on here. So I just simply charted our average age at retirement of our members since 99-2000. So you can see 99-2000 started about 61 and was fairly stable for the first part of that decade, and then over time it's been increasing to where it is now, which is 63. So when I charted this, two things came to mind. I thought one of the primary reasons that it's probably increasing is that these members are trying to maximize their age factor, which maximizes at 2.4% at age 63. So I thought that's probably the motivating factor. And secondly, I thought more than likely their service credit is actually increasing alongside their age, right? Because they're in the profession longer, working at older ages, so their service credit is probably going up. That actually hasn't been the case. So 99-2000, we were at about 27 years and peaked shortly after that, and it's basically been decreasing since then. So we've got a situation where our average age of retirement is increasing, but our service credit is actually, or has been, decreasing. So something's going on. The behavioral underpinnings of the membership seems to be changing. There's evidence of that.
So I know we talked about the age that people enter into the system. Does that seem to be increasing?
You'll see.
Can I have
Good bridge.
I have another
Right down the
question.
line.
That was your teaser, your amuse bouche. I feel like the mic it's a hot mic. My other question, Tom, and I don't know if I should have asked you ahead of time, but did you disaggregate, or is there a way to look at K through 12 versus the community college population? Or maybe down the road?
Yeah, down the road we can definitely look at
Okay.
that. This is the population as a whole.
Okay, but just maybe down the road, I think it would be fascinating sometime, next year or so to kind of compare and contrast, just because I know community college is a smaller, it's like 7% of the membership, but I do know at least from my campus, it's like, the ages are really different. We have folks in their 90s teaching community college, and we tend to enter, to Dana's point, we tend to enter community college teaching later in life. But I'm kind of curious to hear about the K through 12 piece too. So, but okay, that'd be great.
So next up, what I wanted to do was isolate at least one of the motivators for why the average age of retirement might be increasing. So what it is, I took a look at the people each year who retired who were 64 or older, because presumably, they've already maximized their age factor. That component of service credit age final compensation has already been satisfied. So it would leave only two other variables in terms of what may be motivating them to continue working. So I know there's a lot here, but let me build it for you. So along the bottom we have fiscal years. The blue line right above that, that is the percentage of that retiring cohort that is age 64 or older. So back in 99-2000, roughly 20% of that retiring cohort was 64 or older. Again, that's stabilized for the first part of that decade. And then now we can see today about 1 in 3 of our retirees is 64 or older when they retire.
I'll let him finish the slide. And then, it's on this slide, but finish the slide.
Okay, yeah, and then I plotted against that the green line above that is their service credit at retirement. And then the red line above that is the line that we just looked at from before. That's everybody's service credit in that year. So here we have a growing percentage, a growing proportion, 64 or older, but their service credit is actually lower relative to the rest of the group. And then I did something similar for final compensation, so the other two components. Did you want me to go back?
Yeah. So the blue line, percentage 64 or older at retirement. So in 1999, 19% of the people that retire into CalSTRS, from CalSTRS, were 64 years of age or older.
Yes.
Okay. So now 25 years later.
About 18.
18?
Yeah.
Oh, wait, yeah. Wait, yeah, no, 18, pardon me. Yeah, 18. I got it, 18, thank you. So it's even more dramatic. Then it's even more dramatic. So it goes from 19 to 36%. So almost doubles as a percentage in a matter of 18 years. How much of that do we think has to do with improved health, breakthroughs in health, people being, they love their job, right? They either love their job or they're healthy enough to continue to work. So if we were to look out from 2015 and go out 18 more years to 2033, what percent, if we were to, like Monte Carlo's syndication, a little gambling here in the auditorium, what percentage of our members would be retiring at 64 years of age or older? Because that will have profound implications for the system and for the education workforce. Because the longer people work, the fewer people coming into the system. Payroll is higher for school districts at the same time that they're going to be making increased contributions to pensions. So do you know why that number went from 19% to 30%? Or do you have any?
Yes, you have an idea?
Do you have, what are they? Yeah, what are they? What do you think?
Wait and see.
Oh.
I think he's getting there.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
It's like a suspense. It's like a thriller right now.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You gotta let it build to the crescendo. We'll keep back.
This is called rising action.
We'll stop bugging you. Keep going, Tom.
All right,
Next
so here's
slide.
a similar chart.
it's really
Similar principle. So the blue line is still the same. That's the percentage of age 64 or older within that retiree cohort. This is plotting their final compensation, again, relative to final compensation of the whole group. So they are sitting below the average, so to speak, of final compensation. So we've got a group here that's growing in size, and then their service credit and their final compensation relative to the rest of the group is below that. So again, indications of some behavioral changes underpinning the membership here. Okay, so what I want to do next is show you a series of portraits, basically, of the membership over time. These are going to be by fiscal year, and let me give you an idea of what you're looking at here. So along the x-axis, you have entry age. So this is the age in which the members started teaching. That retired in, for instance, 99-2000. Along your y-axis, you've got just a simple count, 0 up to 1,500 in this case. And then each one of these represents the number of teachers that started teaching at, for instance, age 23, 24, 25, et cetera. So it's a basic distribution of the entry ages of the population that retired here. I've also added, just for reference, the mean, otherwise known as the average. The height of this line doesn't necessarily matter. It just matters that it's pointing down to where the average of these blue bars are. I've also got the median. So another measure of central tendency, the median shows basically 50% of your observations, or 50% of the people are on the left of the line, and the other 50% are to the right of the line. So just perspective, mean, median, relative to the population. That also points to the point on the graph where they started. And then I've also just plotted here their average retirement age of this group. Okay, so here we were, 99-2000, and this distribution looks what I would think is fairly typical, what we would expect, right? We have the high point at age 23. Teachers, they spend 4 years in undergrad, a year in credential program, for instance, and then the bulk of them, the highest point of them started at 23, and then we have this sort of gradual tapering off. We have a median of 27.5, so half the teachers started before that age, half after, and our average age of starting was 31. So then we go to 2006, 2007. So the graph looks very similar. There's just more people. Here we've got a high point at 24, but again, the pattern looks very similar, tapering off into the older ages. Our median didn't move, and our mean didn't move, so not much really changed. Technically, there's statistical significance in the difference between the prior population and this population, but it doesn't really show much when you actually when you graph it. So now let's fast forward to today. So here we are. This is the most recent retiring cohort. We can see that there's a change in the behavior, right? Our median has gone up, our mean has gone up. The amount in the sort of the 24, 25 range has gone down, while the amounts in the later 30s have gone up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this group red and then layer behind it in green 2006, 2007, and then behind that in black is 99, 2000. So I'm calling this kind of the infrared view. So you can see, particularly where the red exceeds some of the darker colors behind it, what's been going on over the last 18 years. We've got increases in around the median and the mean there, and in the later ages as well. So there's evidence that teachers are entering the workforce later, teaching career later. So I also broke it down for the sake of those who are 64 or older to see what's going on with them. This is 99, 2000. The distribution, nothing particularly remarkable about it. It's fairly uniformly distributed with a peak at about 34, median of 35, and then an average of about 36.5. Here they are 6, 7 years later, and then here they are today. So we got a huge jump in the median, and then also a big increase in our mean, and here's the infrared view of that. And so you can see how the red sits above the darker colors behind. We're actually getting almost two peaks. We have a peak early in the 20s, and then it decreases, and then you get a peak late 30s, and almost like a second peak late 40s. So there's definitely been some changes in the way that in the career arc of the teachers. Okay, so to recap where we're at so far, so we're seeing evidence that members are working into older ages. We're seeing evidence that an increasing percentage is working beyond age 64 older, which mathematically explains why the average is going up. And we're seeing evidence that they are entering the career at later ages. So then the question is, what does this all mean? There's, at first when you think of an older teacher in the classroom, you think, are they able to keep up? Mentally, can they hold it together for, the sake of conducting a class? And the research shows that the answer is yes, and here's why. So psychologists look at knowledge in two terms. They look at knowledge in terms of what they call crystallized intelligence. So that's sort of the accumulation of all of your knowledge over your living years. You put all the knowledge in the bank, and they call it crystallized intelligence. And so that's actually represented by that sort of blue, aqua blue line, where it increases over time, which is expected. Now they also refer to knowledge, a different kind of knowledge called fluid intelligence. So your ability to process information quickly, new information quickly. And predictably that goes down over time, which is represented by the black line. So it used to be thought that as your fluid intelligence, your ability to process information went down, that your productivity on the job, your performance on the job went down too. So then they said, well, because of age, as you get older and your fluid intelligence goes down, job productivity goes down too. That's actually not the case. What they're finding is that as your crystallized intelligence goes up over time, that it provides enough of a buffer so that your decline in fluid intelligence isn't that much of a setback. So it basically means that as an older worker, you can keep up just fine. All right, so then the next question is, so what about the nature of work? Is it good for you, so to speak? And the thought is that, I think most people think, working is kind of a grind. Mentally, it's tough. I'm just, once I get to check out, I'm just going to, my mind is going to be clear and free, and mental health is going to be great because I don't have to worry about work anymore, et cetera. So that also may not be the case. So what this is showing, I know there's a lot here, but your axis across the top is your employment rate. And what that means is this researcher compared the labor force participation of those 60 to 64 to those 50 to 54. The difference between the two. So for instance, if you look at the United States, those who are 60 to 64 employed in the labor force, about 35% less than those 50 to 54. So as you move left on this graph, it's basically showing you retirement, right? Countries, for instance, like France, Austria, the Netherlands, they have earlier retirement ages. So the proportion of those 60 to 64 relative to 50 to 54 in their workforce is almost, 90% less, Okay, and then contrast that to like the United States, Switzerland, United Kingdom. We have older retirement ages, so the proportion is higher of 60 to 64 still in the workforce relative to 50 to 54-year-olds. Now look down your right axis, your y-axis, and you can see that's cognitive performance. So you put it all together, the earlier you get out of the workforce, the lower your cognitive performance is. So these researchers are suggesting that there is a mental retirement effect. Basically, that staying in the workforce is good for mental health. And when you think about it, I mean, it could probably make sense, right? You've got, on a daily basis, if you stay in the workforce, you've got high social engagement. You're talking to colleagues, to other types of people. Teachers are talking to their students. They're talking to their colleagues. They're talking to parents. So that keeps you sharp, so to speak. And then also the challenges that come with working every day. You're thinking through problems, new challenges, things that just can't necessarily be recreated when you're sitting at home doing nothing. So the suggestion here is that staying in the workforce is actually good long-term for mental health.
A little shocking, I think, given how much you read about France and how, it just seems counterintuitive in a lot of ways, I guess, just in terms of, like in Spain, I guess Spain's sort of more in the middle, but, taking time out in the middle of the day. And it certainly feels like in the US, there's a lot more, just seems like there's a lot more stress, or it seems like maybe that's just because I live in America and I work in America. But so this is really an interesting slide. It's fascinating.
Clicker doesn't want to move. There we go. Okay, so just a quick word on teachers relative to their longevity. So we've seen the experience study. Our teachers are living longer. Harvard did a piece of research. They looked at income as it relates to longevity from 2000 to 2014. And unsurprisingly, they found that as your income went up, your life expectancy went up. Now, if you look at, from other research that we have, teachers' household income sits in some of the higher ranges of the income percentiles nationally. So that, in conjunction with their level of education, almost half of teachers have either a master's or a doctorate degree. They have underlying characteristics that are conducive to longevity, which we've seen with the experience study. So here we are. So life expectancy has actually increased very quickly over the last 50 or 60 years, but cultural norms haven't really caught up yet. For instance, if you see an older worker in the workforce, you might sort of consider that an anomaly, but there's a very good chance that's going to be commonplace going forward. We're looking at actually digging into this a little deeper with some of the research. We're going to be partnering with Stanford, Dr. Carstensen, who spoke to you in October, asking questions of our teachers, for instance, and then Sharon, this kind of comes back to what you were just mentioning about sort of daily stress and what have you, but we would ask them questions along the lines of this. If you knew that you were going to live longer, and you knew that there was a likelihood that you were going to work into older ages, and you knew that working into older ages was good for long-term mental health, how might you restructure the way you approach your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, right? Because our country, other developed countries around the world, we approach it where we just hit it hard and fast in our 20s and our 30s. We knock out career and family and school and all of that. But if you knew that things were going to be different down the road, how would you change the way that you approach those decades of your life? So we're looking at exploring that kind of research. The other thing we want to look at is our retired population who's actually working. So we know from our retirement readiness assessment that 1 in 5 teachers works, 1 in 5 retired teachers works for pay. They do it because they want to, some need the money, but we know 20% roughly does it. What I would be interested in exploring is, given the presence of their defined benefit, how does that allow teachers to kind of volunteer, basically, right? Work not for pay. Work is work, so they could get the cognitive benefit of working through volunteering, but then volunteer work has societal implications like benefits, economic benefits, personal benefits, so just some different lines of research that we can explore. So in summary, that's where we're at. We're seeing an aging nation, an aging workforce, And it seems that maybe our teachers are on sort of the cutting edge of working into older ages. Thank you.
So going back to your comment that if you knew you were going to be more mentally healthy later in age, that you were physically going to be able to live longer, would we live our lives differently when we're younger? And I think that I'd like to throw in, and you knew you would be financially secure. Because I think that's, I mean, somehow if we wrap that up into what we're doing for our younger members, and some of the stuff that we're trying to get them to do to be involved in pension too, I think that what you've done research-wise could have great implications for our marketing of the products that we have to help our members become financially secure in retirement. I would live my life different.
Well, I was just going to comment too that I'm in my 40s and I have so many friends now. I've never thought I would say these words, but I'm meditating. I'm taking yoga classes. I'm a runner and I like to play sports hard, and run hard. And now my hips hurt and my knees hurt. And, and so I'm taking yoga and I'm learning about, flexibility and regeneration and stuff that I never thought I would be doing. And part of the reason why I'm running hard is because I'm trying to stay healthy because I want to live a long life. And so I think the questions that you're raising, I agree with Dana in terms of the implications for our younger members and how we can and kind of appeal to them because we are living longer and we want to be healthy. But I also think active teachers kind of in my demo too. I mean, I think a lot of us are having these questions of, okay, if we're going to work 20 more years and we want to be healthy, and especially being teachers, you need to move around and you've got to be healthy. It's a huge issue. So I really appreciate the question. And it leads me to be thinking about the question that I know we're going to talk in item 5 about health benefits. And I'm kind of obsessed with this, and I'm appreciative of having Joy on our board because of her day job in that world. But to me, the questions you're asking about health and sort of why do people have to retire? And sometimes, at least in my world, it's because they have major health crises. I've helped 2 people retire last week, kind of in an emergency situation. Literally, it was heartbreaking to see folks have these health issues. And I think health benefits and having health benefits is a huge issue in terms of the financial security. And if you don't have health benefits and you're counting on just Medicare, and who knows what's going to happen in that world in the future, I think that's another factor that we should be looking at is the implications of having health care, not having health care, because to me, preventative issues are a big deal too. I'm doing all this preventative stuff like acupuncture and things, again, that I never thought I would say, but it's because I want to attend to my body now so that in 20 years I don't need back surgery. And actually, I mean, I'm sure United Healthcare talks about this, but Blue Cross called me last month and said, we've noticed you've had all these claims, for your for back issues, and I don't like taking medication. My doctor will give me Vicodin, and I don't like to take things like that. So I've gone to physical therapy and gone to acupuncture. So it's interesting to me that healthcare now is reaching out because it's financially in their interest to
because they care about
to have me. You're right. They want me to go to yoga instead of getting surgery. It's cheaper to join a gym than it is to get surgery. So I just think some of these healthcare trends are really relevant in terms of the financial piece. And then again, I see people who go bankrupt because of healthcare issues, teachers that are really struggling with that. So, and what was the other thing I was going to mention? There was one last. I think that's it for now. And I've got a couple folks in the queue, so let me grab them. Paul.
Thank you. Very interesting report.
Yeah.
On benefits and services 29, there's a paragraph that says basically that the mean household income for retirees is in the 70th percentile nationwide, and the median is in the 75th percentile, 95,000 and 85,000. So that being in those percentiles is good, and I guess that's a function of the success of our DB program. But medians and means often mask the variety of experience. So who are the people who are retiring without that such good compensation? Why are they retiring? Are they at a point where they can't work longer? They entered the workforce as teachers really late. I mean, what is there something we know about that group of people so that we can think about what we can maybe do to improve their retirement situation?
We're actually going to be looking at them more closely in the coming months. We have adequacy research coming in June. And at the end of this year, November, we have our next round of our retirement readiness assessment where some of that income data came from. We're looking at expanding the way we're asking the questions so that we can dig in deeper, specific to certain people, certain groups, so we can answer those questions better for you right now. So we don't have answers now, but we can get them for you.
Great, I think it would be very interesting.
And Tom's been doing to brag about you. He's been doing wonderful modeling on the adequacy and looking at some income lines and who's below those income lines and where it is. We've got some insights we've never had before, and he's maturing this modeling for you.
Okay, good. Look forward to hearing about it.
Yeah, my hope is that that this is just the beginning of, a year long or however long it takes a process of uncovering more information so that we can make sure that we understand what's changing. I think that's the original intent of this, is just to understand our membership, how it's changed, and then how as a system, how can we best serve our members and that changing demographic. So it's really helpful. Anyone else from the committee? I don't see anyone else. Oh, I see Mr. Keeley.
Well, thank you. It was a very thought-provoking set of slides. And sure, and I think
You gonna do yoga next week?
I don't know. I'm not there yet. I'm only right now. I'm only here, right now. Next week isn't here. It's one breath
One
at a
day
time.
at a time, right?
No, one breath at a time. One breath at a time.
Yeah. Amen to that.
Ideally.
Amen to that.
But no, very thought-provoking. And I think about, what is this, what are the implications for us, right? Forward thinking about the system, and how do we take this tremendous amount of information and more that you will bring to us into something that's actionable for us and providing service to our membership. Just a couple of thoughts, and maybe they'll go on the work plan, is, the future of retirement. In-depth discussion. How will it look 10 years from now, and what might it look like 20 years from now? How might it look similar today, and what are the differences? The future of teaching and learning, and the role that artificial intelligence and technology may play in impacting California's educators. Those are just a couple of thoughts, but the key is how do we take this information, and clearly you're both very accomplished, and we're fortunate to have you to be able to have that arm of research here, but networking, like you said, with folks at Stanford and other places, and then working in the governance committee. How do you take this information into something that's actionable for our system to provide the services and benefits to our membership? So thanks for the thought-provoking presentation. I like especially the last slide of the seemingly two retirees sitting on the rock. The Hindus in their fourth stage of life, they go off to the Himalayas to die.
I can see him up on the. I can see Harry cross-legged up on the hill. Anyway, Jennifer, do you want to say something?
Very, very interesting information, and a few interesting components jump out, and one would be, were there particular state policies that were created at certain times that might have triggered certain changes, such as teacher shortages and ways that legislators have tried to address teacher shortages, such as harkening back, remember the day there was a longevity bonus? 2% got diverted to the DBS. did certain state policies incentivize or tweak some of the numbers? And then in addition, as the state has gone out to recruit teachers, particularly second career teachers, is there a way to ascertain how that has influenced the numbers? And because we're in a shortage as well, and that could be particularly helpful since the legislature is really grappling with ways to solve the current teacher shortage. So being able to see if there are correlations and then at least extrapolate what's possible and help educate the legislature regarding the importance of having a secure, adequate retirement might be particularly helpful with some of the overall 101 retirement education that needs to happen, because ultimately it's not just about some of the demographics, but are the benefits adequate overall? While there's not time to talk about what we'd really like to get, I think it doesn't mean that you shouldn't still talk about what members need to retire and even communicate that to the legislature. So as they're trying to decide what they need to do over the next 5, 10, 20 years, they at least have information that's going to be more helpful.
Harry, can I ask you, when you were giving suggestions to the work plan, when you said future of retirement, are you talking about future of retiring teachers or future of retirement in general in America?
Retiring teachers.
Retiring teachers. I just want to make sure because I think we've had these conversations before about our educational sessions and info items and wanting to make sure we, always, we can talk about a lot of things, for a long time, but we always kind of want to be mindful of our resources and time and want to focus it on oh, sorry, go ahead, Pat. Thank you.
Retired teacher. I just was looking at the number of death benefit payments that were not paid. And I'm sort of appalled, 5,630 cases. And I'm sure these weren't all spinsters with no heirs. And I'm wondering if there might not be some way of following up more thoroughly. I can't believe that they couldn't find these people. They were sending pensions checks to them. I can't. So anyway, I would like to see that and volunteer to help.
Summer, can we have that as an info item and perhaps ask staff to get back to us maybe in June, Andrew? Would that be just with a kind of an update on what happens with that and how do we track or attempt to track those folks down?
Yes, definitely.
That'd be great. Thank you, Pat. I appreciate that. Appreciate your input. And I do know to Harry's other suggestion about the future of teaching and learning and AI, I think we're gonna make sure. I really appreciate the committee's input on our work plan next year. I think there's a lot of interesting things to talk about, and we'll make sure that we put that on the agenda, the work plan for this next year.